Hi, and welcome to the latest quickfire video interview from IoT Now. Now, as many of you will have seen on our website, rumors on Monday were confirmed on Tuesday that California-based Semtech, a supplier of semiconductors and advanced algorithms, is to acquire Canada's IoT solution provider, Sierra Wireless. It's a significant deal in the Internet of Things, being worth $1.2 billion US. So I'm delighted that we can grab some time with the very busy Alistair Fulton, Semtech's General Manager for IoT, wireless and sensing businesses, to discuss the deal. Alistair, it's good to have you back for another chat.
Hi, nice to be here, Jeremy.
Alistair, what attracted Semtech to acquire Sierra Wireless? And given that Sierra's been rumored to be available for a while, why now? Is this part of a North American fight back against Chinese IoT successes?
No, I mean, this is really the next logical step in a journey that we've been on for a while, focusing initially, of course, on licensed LPWAN and the LoRa technology that we're responsible for. And that path has really been focused on addressing what we think is kind of the last area of to be solved in the IoT. We view IoT solutions as probably the best single way in which humanity can address the causes of climate change, in that understanding the operational efficiency of different companies, industries, enterprises, and being able to optimize that efficiency aligns almost completely with the goal of reducing consumption of raw materials and reducing pollution. So we've been on a path to try and solve the complexity that's inherent in IoT. And in many ways, that's a problem I've focused on for the entirety of my career. If I go back 20 years or so, when we started calling things IoT, even though many companies had been doing them for decades before, the thing that was hard about IoT solutions was kind of everything. What you did with the data, how you analyze the data, ingesting stream data at vast volumes, connecting devices, etc. Everything was difficult, and a lot of businesses did quite well, providing services that solved some of that complexity for enterprise customers. But that complexity equated to cost, and cost meant that not many customers could afford to implement IoT solutions. Now, of course, today a large part of that problem has been solved. IoT platforms have emerged over the course of the last 15 years or so. I've worked on a couple myself, and those platforms were designed all with one really single aim in mind, and that was to make the process of ingesting data and figuring out what it meant and doing something about it much easier. And today, I think there are platforms which are generalist Swiss Army knives. There are platforms which are targeting a particular industry sector, but that problem is largely solved. There are a range of tools that today, a proficient programmer can build in a matter of hours what it would have taken a development team weeks to have built a few years ago. The next part of the problem in IoT, if you like, was really how to connect everything. And when you go back to the early days of when we started calling these things IoT again, when people talked about 50 billion connections, etc., I think we all thought at the time that those connections were going to be cellular, because cellular was the great solution, and indeed many of them were. And cellular was and is a great tool for a lot of device types. But for the sorts of massive IoT implementations that we I think need really to strike at the heart of the causes of climate change, sensor networks that cover farmers' fields, that cover the entirety of a factory system or a smart city, those types of sensors required a different type of connectivity. They required low power, long range, and very cost-effective connectivity. And that's where LoRa came from. That literally was the goal that we set out with at Semtech, to fill that gap. And LoRa has proven to be an extremely effective tool at filling that gap. Mm-hmm. What we've been focused on for the last few years is what I would call the final problem in IoT, I hope. And that is just the complexity of stitching together solutions, because every IoT solution, when you look at a factory or a smart city, or when you look at these large scale system level problems that the IoT can solve, they require multiple different types of sensor. And stitching together those sensors and dealing with different technologies equals complexity, complexity equals cost, cost equals fewer people. We focused on LoRa and making LoRa a really easy tool to use. I've always been struck by the pure technical capability of LoRa and its ability to solve problems that other technologies can't. And our philosophy has been, if we can make that technology accessible to a broader audience, if we can make that technology usable by a cloud-first IoT developer, and let's face it, most developers today kind of quote unquote start in the cloud, and they're not proficient in C programming, and they're not used to dealing with small embedded footprints.
Indeed.
So we've wrapped LoRa in software, and we've provided cloud services that take things like calculating location, and rather than leaving it up to individual developers to rewrite that same piece of code over and over again, we're providing those capabilities in the form of easy to use cloud services. So and I think we come to a point where, you know, we can optimize our part of the jigsaw, if you like, the LoRa part of the jigsaw. We can smooth the edges and make it much more accessible, and we've done a lot of that. But it's still been very clear to us that just one piece of the jigsaw being easier to use doesn't fundamentally solve the problem. And so this acquisition has been something we've been thinking on for a while, as you would imagine, is really the next step to say, well, why don't we just take the two sets of tools that really between them are the most important technologies in IoT, those being cellular IoT and unlicensed LPWAN LoRa, and bring them together in a way that means that developers don't have to worry. I mean, if you think of it at the moment, most IoT solutions today comprise multiple islands. You know, you have the island that is the devices that require a high bandwidth connection. You have the island that is the devices that require low power. And at the moment, as a developer, you either have to pick which island you're going to live on, or you have to get very good at rowing between the islands. and that equals complexity, equals cost, equals, it just creates an enormous drag on IoT adoption. Yeah. And we think that this is the thing that, you know, for a long time, the goal and the value of IoT has been crystal clear. Why are not more people, you know, able to build solutions? And we believe that this is the cause. So by bringing together those islands, if you like, into a continent, by putting behind the green curtain, you know, the magic of how different devices communicate, I, as a developer, I don't want to know or really want to worry about how a device update gets to the device. I just know I want it to get there, whether it's communicated over cellular or LoRaWAN or Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. I just want it to happen. And equally, I want the data to come back to me. I kind of don't really want to spend a lot of time worrying about how. And that kind of extends to a whole bunch of things, provisioning and security and so forth. And so this acquisition is really the next step on our journey to deliver that simplicity to developers, on the basis that we think if we can do that, and if we can simplify IoT development, we make IoT a much more usable tool for more people. And we do our part as a company to help provide tools that can address climate change.
Okay. Just looking, before we talk more about the technology, looking at the background to it, I mean, the deal is expected to roughly double Semtech's annual revenue from what I hear. And Sierra has already announced preliminary results on Tuesday, showing it adjusted EBITDA earnings of approximately $22 million. I mean, that's about 40% up on Q1 earnings. Is this Sierra Wireless growth part of the predicted annual cycle or down to something else, do you think?
I think it's a testament to what Sierra Wireless has been doing, frankly. I think Sierra Wireless is, and this is why the marriage between, you know, the two companies, because that's really what it comes down to, makes total sense. I mean, Sierra has been at the forefront of wireless IoT in the cellular space for a good long time. If you look at the quality of the products they produce on the hardware side, I mean, I think the router products that Sierra produce are really second to none. And that's critical because, you know, much in the same way as LoRa, we believe that being able to go all the way down to the hardware layer, whether that's the chip layer in the case of LoRa or the module layer in the case of cellular, that gives you an ability to provide a more secure service, and it also allows you to optimize, the ease of development in a way that you can't if you don't touch that layer. So the fact that Sierra has a very strong heritage in hardware is really important to us, and is what's been driving in part their growth. The other thing that's been driving their growth, honestly, is they've been focused on the same set of things in cellular. So for a long time, the MVNO platform that Sierra has, the AirVantage platform, which provides a wealth of different device management capabilities, and then the Octave platform, which is a data orchestration and ingest platform. I think putting together that toolkit for cellular and doing so in such honestly a high quality way has been what's been driving Sierra's growth to this point.
You talked about bringing these islands together and creating a continent. It's a nice analogy. Clearly, this is going to have a dramatic effect on the offering. What's the future in that offering for NB-IoT?
We think that it is not, at the end of the day, our job to make choices for developers. We think it's our job to help developers make the choices that they want. I mean, that said, NB-IoT is an interesting technology. It's targeting a lot of the same challenges that LoRa challenges, albeit from a licensed spectrum perspective. We've not seen NB-IoT adopted particularly widely outside of Asia. That's not to say that adoption rate won't increase. But there's a tendency to view deals like this as a kind of either or, and this one's going to be. I think we look at the IoT, and you and I could bet, is it 3% of the IoT solutions that should be there, or is it 5%, or is it? It's a very small percentage, whichever way you look at it. And so we believe that if we can provide the tools that developers want to use, and I think if we can break developers away from having to choose, the most suitable or the best compromise between what they're trying to achieve because they need to use a single technology, if we can free them from that so that they can pick the best technology for each part of the solution, then again, I think we've done our job. So NB-IoT, I think, has a valuable part to play in the jigsaw of IoT. It's very suitable for specific use cases. LoRaWAN has, I think, a very large role to play in the IoT. Cellular, of course, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, etc. And I don't think it's the job of providers like Semtech to put a finger on the scale so much, if you like. It's the job of providers like us to make it easy for people to choose what they need.
And finally, what else will you be able to do following this acquisition that you couldn't perhaps do before?
Well, I mean, up until this point, as I said, we have been able to optimize LoRaWAN and the underlying LoRa radios which support LoRaWAN. And when I say optimize, that kind of spans a range of different things. There is, of course, the development experience and providing tools that we've been following a tried and tested path, really, of software abstraction. Underlying hardware is hard, complex, requires special skills. If you can abstract a developer away from that by providing a software layer, it makes that technology much easier to use. And so we've gone a long way down that path. We've also been focused as members of the LoRa Alliance on really helping play our part in driving the evolution of the LoRaWAN standard. And I say play our part because the reason that the LoRa Alliance exists and is such an important body is it represents the coming together of pretty much every type of business across the IoT spectrum to drive a protocol in the direction that ecosystem needs. Now, one could debate how that differs from other standards exercises, but it's a much more, I would say, real-time and connected growth process. And that optimization process has been really important because while LoRaWAN operate in an unlicensed spectrum band, and that creates a bunch of freedoms, like I can buy a gateway and plug it in and I'm a gateway, I'm a network provider. Standards are really important because standards mean that I can buy a temperature sensor from any one of hundreds of different providers, and that temperature sensor is fundamentally going to work in the same way. Not only is the radio IP the same, which makes it infinitely easier to manage, but the way that it communicates is the same. And so that's really critically important. But we've kind of gone as far down that path, I think, with LoRa as we can. There's more to do, of course, there's always more to do. But what this allows us to do is really, and I won't say apply that philosophy to cellular, because Sierra has already been following this philosophy. It gives us the opportunity to join together with another engineering-driven company that has made its name by driving innovation in much the same way as Semtech has, to join together, and as a result of those combined capabilities, provide a broader toolkit that just in the same way enables developers to focus on what they're trying to do, because at the end of the day, everything between me and writing the application is just overhead. If we can come together and provide a toolkit that allows developers to deal with the piping and the plumbing and the day-to-day orchestration and focus more of their attention on building applications, then that's an extremely powerful thing. And without this acquisition, we would have always been optimizing for one jigsaw piece, not the jigsaw in its entirety.
Yeah. Well, I really hope we can get you back soon, Alistair, to talk about the progress when you've been going through this. Till then, many thanks for joining us.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeremy. Pleasure to speak to you.
And thank you, everyone, for watching wherever we find you. Till next time, bye for now.